What is up, YouTube? Dots Gaming here, and today I'm bringing you guys my Nightblade Tank PvE build for the Elder Scrolls Online. That's right, you heard me. This is going to be a Nightblade PvE Tank. I've had a ton of fun tanking on my Nightblade recently, and I am extremely excited to bring this build to you guys because I have been getting asked a ton about it on my stream. Now, I know there's, that super common belief that that non-DK tanks and non-Warden tanks are just not capable of tanking and you shouldn't even waste your time, but I personally don't agree with that sentiment. While DK tanks and Warden tanks are going to be looked more favorably upon for, score-pushing, meta-focused groups, for the majority of players who are just looking for completion or maybe to even just do dungeons, you can do just fine on the non-meta tanks, and the Nightblade is one of them. I've seen a bunch of people talking about how, especially Nightblade, that don't think it's worth it. It's not worth the time. They shouldn't even bother. But I have been having great success tanking on my Nightblade. I've been having a lot of fun with it personally. I've been doing tons of vet DLC, hard mode dungeon achievement runs with, no issues besides obviously learning the mechanics of those dungeons, but I've never felt once that being a Nightblade has held me back from doing my job as a tank. And I've also, on this build, tanked multiple vet trials, as well as I've done a vet hard mode trial as well. So this build is tried and tested, and you will know that if you're putting this on your character, you will be setting yourself up for success. Now, I will be showing you guys 4 different combinations today, 2 dungeon setups and 2 tank setups. For those of you who play a tank, you will know tanks generally tend to carry a lot of gear with them because, certain gear for certain situations based on who the other person you're tanking with in trials, what you might need in a certain dungeon scenario. There's a bunch of different gear that you need. So I'm going to show you guys what I personally have on my tank and what I run around with. But like I said, one of my favorite things with this is the fact that I am tanking on a Nightblade. I do it on stream, and seeing people come into stream and going like, wow, I didn't know you could actually tank on a Nightblade. Everyone always told me it was terrible. And being able to show those people that it can be done is very, very fun. And I do enjoy being able to show that you really can play the Nightblade and that whole blood tank style. You can absolutely do that and have a great time with it. Now, just as a disclaimer, this is just how I play my tank and how I like it and what works best for me. Maybe something might work a little bit better for you, or maybe Nightblade isn't tanking for you, isn't a good tank for you. So that's fair, but this is just what I like, what works for me, and what I've been having success with. Obviously, if you're a meta pusher and looking for peak score runs, you're going to want to do something like the DK, or maybe even look to Warden. But for 99% of the player base who that does not apply to, you can really do just fine tanking on a Nightblade or any other non-meta tank. You just need to play into that class's strengths, and I do believe that with this setup I have done that. I've spent a lot of time working on this and getting all the tank setups the way I like them, so hopefully you guys enjoy it as well. Do keep in mind that I do not have all my gear traits transmuted. I'm still missing a bunch of transmutations. I'll have the optimal transmutations in the description below on the written builds, so you can go check those out. But I will also talk about them today and what you should do. Now, I'm going to kind of do this in a bit of a different order than your traditional builds video because I kind of have a bunch of different setups and I have a bunch of different things and a bunch of different ways that I play. So, you know what? I changed it. I take that back. What I'll do is I'll go over the dungeon setups first. I'll go over the dungeon setups first, and then I will go over the trial setups afterwards and just go through the full setups. So I would definitely recommend watching this full video. I know it's going to be on the longer side, but I would watch the full video because I'm going to do a lot of my explanations the first time around. So it'll be much easier for you to understand, when I do kind of skip past some things later in the video, because you kind of got those explanations the first time. So we are actually going to start with the more slightly DPS sap tank oriented style that I know a lot of people like. All right. So the first style of tanking that I do on this guy is more of a, your sap tank. It's, obviously sap tanking isn't what it used to be, but I've put together a setup that, kind of brings it as close to it as as I've been able to get it, but this is one of my favorite setups if I want to pump out a little bit of extra damage on it for my groups. So the first thing that I run is 2 pieces of Bloodspawn. Bloodspawn offers a crap ton of additional resistances to your character, which is always very welcome as a tank, but the big reason I chose Bloodspawn is for the ultimate generation. One of the things that I wanted to focus on for my higher damaging build is really, really high ultimate uptimes for my group. The really high ultimate uptimes for my group and being able to keep Warhorn up for a long time and very frequently is going to help the group really progress through that content much, much faster. And when combined with my second 5B set, it does it perfectly, and that is Akaviri Dragon Guard, which gives us a line of magic recovery, healing take, and health, and reduces the cost of our ultimate abilities by 15%. So when you take the ultimate generation into account of Bloodspawn, when you take into account the Catalyst passive from the Siphoning skill line that gives us 20 ultimate upon drinking a potion, and you take Akaviri Dragon Guard into account, you are able to pump out Warhorns very, very frequently and keep your group's damage very, very high, which I really, really like. But the set that brings us closer to that old school sap tank style and brings a bit of AoE damage and healing and kind of helps, you know, because we can't just spam sap as much as we used to be, is Baraha's Curse, which gives a line of health, a line of magicka, a line of stamina, reduces damage taken from environmental traps by 40%, and you have a 25% chance to create desiccated ground for 5 seconds, which reduces movement speed of enemies by 70%, which is really helpful for a Nightblade because we do not have any ground roots, so the 70% snare is very helpful. And we also deal 923 magic damage every second and get healed for 100% of that damage. So with that rune underneath a group of enemies combined with spamming Sap Essence, we are able to deal a good bit of AoE pressure if you also combine that with Wall of Elements from our back bar. Granted, this is a tank build, and I do not, I do not lean away from the tanking to focus on damage. This isn't some sort of, weird hybrid setup. This is tank first and foremost, but if you want to bring that little bit of extra damage that sap tanking used to be able to bring to the table, this setup combined with, like I said, the way we have our skills will really, really help you do that. And also, in terms of my weapon choices, I am running Sword and Board Ice Staff. I used to run double Sword and Board, but I felt that Sword and Board Ice Staff not only brought more damage via Elemental Blockade, but Elemental Blockade, because we are running an Ice Staff, that's a very helpful snare. Again, Nightblades do not have any ground roots, so being able to have the snare and possible immobilize with the Frost Blockade is extremely helpful, But like I said, mostly the big thing is that whenever that blockade procs and your absorb stamina enchant is off cooldown, you will be getting stamina restored. And that is extremely helpful for our sustain. So when we're on our front bar, we're just getting stamina restoration from that back bar glyph, which is incredibly nice. And you do not get that bonus with double SMB. So I definitely recommend SMB and staff. Could not recommend it more, especially moving forward and looking to our next patch with the changes that are possibly coming to one-handed and two-handed weapons, with the enchants being halved and whatnot. You might need to run the two-handed back bar for the actual full crusher value, but we'll have to see. At the moment, that's the way it is, but if the crusher ends up getting halved on a one-handed bar, your double SMB is not going to even be as viable because, again, you'll be having half a crusher. Not worth it. But for now, we are running Infused Crusher on the front bar and Infused Stamina Restoration on the back bar. But in terms of like glyphs and enchants and all that stuff, traits, we are running 2 Infused and we are running 6 Sturdy. That is what I like to run for my Imperials. If you are a Argonian, you can afford to make this Infused as well. But for me, being an Imperial, I don't have that big potion passive sustain, so I like to bring a little bit of extra Sturdy into the mix. So we are running 3 prismatics on the big pieces of the body. Again, 2 are infused, 1 is sturdy. We're also running a infused on our shield. That is also sturdy. We are running health on our shoulder, gloves, waist, and shoes, all sturdy. This is a 5-1-1. We have medium gloves and a light belt. The reason I do that is for max stats, really boost up the magicka, really boost up the stamina, get us over that 35k HP threshold. We're also running triple healthy as well to get us to that HP threshold. We are running 2 magicka recovery glyphs as well as 1 block cost reduction glyph. Very, very helpful. And then we already have gone over the weapons. So that is the gear for the more sap tank style setup. I'm going to go over the skills now. Skills are pretty similar from build to build, but I will go over variations towards the end of the video. Like I said, this is going to be a bit on the longer side. This is a lot to discuss. The first thing that we have is Pierce Armor. This is our taunt, Major Fracture, Major Breach. Can't be a tank without this skill. Very, very important. We also have Heroic Slash. Heroic Slash gives us our Minor Heroism, plays into the Ultimate Generator theme of the build, and we also get Minor Maim and a movement speed slow. Very, very helpful. Very great skill. Offers a ton for the tank. Minor Maim is very helpful for helping reducing that incoming damage, so it's just a good skill overall. This is our flex spot in the skill that I will vary the most based off of what build I'm playing, what the situation calls for, etc, etc. But for this build, most of the time, I run Sap Essence. Sap Essence is just, it's such a fun skill to play with. It will really feel like that blood tank, being able to heal yourself and heal allies and just deal that AoE damage. It's just a really fun skill to play with. I really, really like it. And it offers a, like I said, really good heal. Really, really good heal for you. So, very good skill. We also have Dark Cloak, 32% max health over 3.5 seconds, and we gain minor protection, reducing our damage taken by 8%. This is our big heal that has been added into the Nightblade kit, so you definitely want to run this on your front bar. You also have Leeching Strikes, so we get a heal on our light and heavy attacks, as well as some stamina restoration. This is our sustain for our stamina for this build. While DKs have Igneous Spam, we have Leeching Strike. So weaving in those light and heavy attacks at the right moments is going to be very important for your overall sustain. We also restore a big boost to our stamina when the effect ends based on the amount of time Leeching Strikes was active. So pretty good skill for our stamina restoration. Definitely something you want to be running. We also have Aggressive Warhorn, stable for tanks. Increases all ally max magicka, max stamina by 10% for 30 seconds. And we also gain Major Force, which increases our critical damage by 15% for 9.5 seconds. Very, very important for group DPS in dungeons. It's incredibly, incredibly powerful. We also have Silver Leash, which is the non-DK chains. Very, very good. It does cost stamina, though, so be careful about spamming it. Try to be accurate when you aim this thing. Will pull something to you and reduce movement speed by 40% for 4 seconds. So it is our chains, but like I said, because it costs stamina, you got to be careful with how much you click this. We also have Inner Rage. Inner Rage was our range taunt. Can't really say much about it. Ignites the fire of hate in an enemy's heart, dealing some magic damage and taunting them for 15 seconds. Not much to say about it. You also get a synergy on it that allies can activate as well for some extra damage and some extra extra damage. All right, we also have Refreshing Path. I really like Refreshing Path. It's a nice little utility skill that the Nightblade is able to bring. So you're able to provide some major expedition to yourself and the group, as well as a hot 902 healing every second. And this is because it's another shadow skill. You're able to maintain your major ward and resolve very, very well. So I used to try to cast this whenever I'm able to on my back bar. It just provides a nice bit of healing. And like I said, you're really able to keep those resistances, that resistance uptime well. We also have Blockade of Frost. Love this skill. Deals frost damage every second and then reduces their movement speed by 60%. And any enemy that's chilled becomes frozen and is immobilized for 4 seconds. Really key skill in my opinion for Nightblades and dungeons. Because we do not have any of that ground-based lockdown like DKs have, being able to run the Blockade of Frost is very important. This is why I like the Frost Staff on the back bar for dungeons. So definitely recommend this. And plus, a little bit of extra damage plays in with the rest of the build. And it also is able to proc that back bar enchant very frequently, so we're able to get some good sustain out of that enchant. We also have Mirage, offers a lot defensively, major evasion, minor resolve, and minor ward, reducing our AoE damage taken by 25% and giving us more spell and physical resistance. Fantastic skill for Nightblade tanking, and definitely a must run. We also have Soul Siphon, sanctify your soul, dealing a big burst of healing, and then an additional huge hot over 4 seconds. We also gain major vitality, increases healing received by 30% for 4 seconds, and we gain the Soul Leech synergy, so you can deal damage to enemies and heal yourself. Your allies can do that when you activate this skill. This burst heal has saved my life and the life of my allies many times in dungeons. This is an incredibly good skill that I do think a lot of people are sleeping on. I like it personally for my back bar. I do run another ultimate back here from time to time. I will talk about that later in the video. But for the most part, especially in dungeons, I am running Soul Siphon on my back bar. Very, very helpful for if either your healer's down or you need to stay alive or there's a group member next to you that can't be healed. Something's going on. It just offers a huge burst of healing to your group. Very, very helpful. Now, in terms of other stuff that is going to be consistent throughout all the builds, we are in Imperial for this setup. I really like the Imperial stat stick race. Very, very good. If you want an easier job sustaining, Argonian's going to be the race for you. But Imperial gives you some of the best stats for a tank, so I wanted to go with the big max stats. So that's why I went with Imperial. Moving into next patch, I'll probably keep it as Imperial, assuming that Red Diamond gets a little bit of buff. If it doesn't, we're going to have to kind of cross that bridge when we get there. In terms of my attribute Layout, I personally went with 21 into Magicka, 10 into health, 33 into stamina. I went with just enough to get my health over 35k. I went with more stam to get to as close to 25k as I could. I was kind of playing with the stam in Magicka for a while, where I felt that my stamina, I could bring it to be okay, and where I could leave my Magicka where it dealt enough damage with all my skills and was able to always have stuff available for utility. And this is what I arrived at. You can customize this however you want, but 21, 10, 33 worked out best for me. Do make sure that your stamina is higher than your Magicka, though, so that whenever you activate a synergy from either orbs or shards, your stamina is restored and not your Magicka pool. We also have 1723 Magicka recovery. Incredibly strong. Incredibly strong amount of Magicka recovery for this build. Really, really helpful. We also are a vampire. Yes, we want to be a vampire. Undeath and the extra recoveries help very, very well. I've had somebody tell me, Dots, vampires are terrible for tanks. Why would you ever run a vampire? There's no way that's possible. Definitely not. No. Even with all of the drawbacks from vampirism, the extra recoveries in Undeath are incredibly powerful. Incredibly powerful. And I absolutely recommend it. Even with the extra fire damage that you take, it is 100% worth it. And I personally have not had any issues with it myself. So I recommend running it personally. It is, I do find it very helpful. And I know people be like, oh, well, how could you tank, you know, like City of Ash 2 and Falkreath Hold? And I've done it. I have done the Falkreath Hold achievement runs on this guy, and the fire was perfectly fine. Just don't stand in it and you'll be fine. But even with all the fire attacks, you have enough resistance in your build. You're basically almost hitting resistance cap or at resistance cap. So you have enough resistance anyway that extra bit of fire damage isn't going to necessarily kill you. We also are running tri-stat food, big boy stats as our tank, so we run with that. And then, like I said, we run the Atronach Mundus for that Magicka recovery to make sure that we always have Magicka available for our utility skills. In terms of champion points, now this is the champion points I run for this setup specifically. The rest of the champion point setups are going to be, I have one other champion point setup for the rest of my builds, but this build specifically, I have a different champion point setup for. We have 100 points in a Blessed, healing done by 15%. Very, very important for a tank. We have 81 points into Elfborn to increase our critical damage and critical healing. 75 in Elemental Expert to give us that big extra damage that this build is looking for. And 14 points in Spell Erosion to give that some damage, extra penetration. We also rank 72 into Ironclad, 32 into Spell Shield, 49 into Hardy and Elemental Defender, 48 in Thick Skinned, and 20 into Heavy Armor Focus. This got me to the resistance amounts that I wanted, as close to cap as I could get. 37 into Warlord, 64 into Arcanist, 56 into Tenacity. Remember, I don't necessarily believe that putting points into Mooncalf is worth it, because, again, your stamina is not going to regenerate when you're blocking, so I'd rather get that extra sustain from my heavy attacks. Plus, you know, this just combos really, really well with Leeching Strikes. We also have 31 into Tumbling and 82 into Shadow Ward for that big boy block cost reduction. So that is going to be our first setup. That's going to be the more sap tank style for dungeons. We are now going to go over my health tank. I'm going to go over the health tank. So as you can see, stats change a bit. Our maximum health shoots up to 51k. Max stamina is at 22.5k now. Max magic is at 20.3k. And we are running 1471 Magicka recovery. Actually, let me change to my other CP so I can make sure what the actual stats are. So, pretty much the same. Pretty much the same. Now, you're going to notice I have a little bit of crit resist here, but that's just because I have a gear trait wrong, but we will go over that in a hot second. So, the health tank setup. Health tank setup has honestly become a favorite of mine. And I honestly have been running the health tank setup myself more than the sap tank for dungeons, because you are tanky as a mofo with this. Like, and you guys are about to see why. You can pull off some stupid amount of healing with this setup. The first monster set is Malabeth. Malabeth is really good for this setup. You get the extra healing over time from the beam whenever you take damage. So the beam will link between you and an enemy, and you'll steal health over time. But you get major vitality that entire time, so you increase your healing received by 30%. So all of your ally healing increased by 30%, and your big percentage-based heals that based off your health, and you have 51k health, those are all boosted by 30%. Incredibly potent for this type of setup. I love this monster set for this gear combo. It's really, really good. And of course, it wouldn't be a health tank setup if we weren't running Plague Doctor. Gives us 2 big lines of maximum health, more healing received to combo with Malabeth, and we also get a huge boost to maximum health with our 5-piece. And then, again, it wouldn't be a health tank setup without Breastplate of the Warrior Poet. We are running 2 lines of max health, some extra spell resist, some extra physical resist, and minor toughness at all times, increasing max health by 10%. This, combined with this, and even, again, 1 line of health here, the first line is line of health, you just get so much HP. Like I said, 51,000 HP on our front bar. You're incredibly tanky, incredibly tanky, and you heal for so much, and it's just such a good build for dungeons, especially if you're doing DLC dungeons and you want to make sure that you stay alive. This will accomplish that. So for this setup, though, I am running a 6-1. I'm running 6 heavy, 1 medium. Want that little bit of extra undaunted, but for the most part, we are sticking with a 6-1 setup. You would optimally want your shoulders, I think, to be medium, but having the helmet at medium is not a big deal at all. It's like, I think it's the same anyway. In terms of enchants, I am still running 3 prismatics. We have 2 infused again, and we are also running 5 sturdy. Ignore this impen piece. This should be sturdy, but we are still running 5 sturdy. I am running, again, all healthy jewelry to go into the full health tank, 2 magic recovery, 1 block cost reduction. Kept that the same. Except for my shield here, I am running a maximum health glyph. Again, want the big boy HP, so that's why we are running this. And plus, I felt that with 20k magicka and 22.5k stamina, I was fine in the resources. I'd rather boost up my health more. I have a reinforced shield. If you want the extra resistances, run reinforced. If you want the extra block cost reduction, run sturdy. Both will work really fine for the shield. I've had no problems with this, though. So run whichever you prefer. I have reinforced at the moment. We have, again, infused crusher on the front bar. I know I need to gold up my weapon. I know. So really, again, important for enabling group DPS. And then we also have Plague Doctor, Ice Staff. This, again, should be infused, not decisive. I need to retrait this. Similarly to I need to retrait the shoulder. But we are running a infused optimally with the stamina restoration for the exact same reasoning that I said earlier in the sap tank style. Otherwise, on our gear, we're running all HP on the little pieces, all HP. So that pretty much covers gear for this. In terms of skills, the only change that I have run, I'm running Deep Thoughts instead of Sap Essence on the front bar. Deep Thoughts gives the build so much sustain. So much sustain. And with how tanky the build is, if you add the major protection that you get from channeling Deep Thoughts on top of that, I literally tanked a boss. Like, I was jokingly during one of my achievement runs, like, we were like wiped. We were trying to do a no death and Vet Valkyrie's Hold. We screwed up on the first boss. Someone died. And I was like, all right, whatever. I'm just going to die. So I literally just clicked Deep Thoughts and just sat there. The first boss couldn't even kill me. It was hilarious. So the amount of sustain you get from this skill, the major protection, it allows you to sustain very well with this setup. I really like it. I definitely recommend it for your front bar skill. But again, this is a flex spot. There are other options, and I will go over those at the end of discussing all of the setups. Again, pretty much the same stuff. We have Vampirism, Atronach, Mundus, Tri-Stat Food, the exact same race and attribute breakdowns. I kept it the same across all the different setups, except for the champion points do change a little bit for this setup, and this is going to be the same champion points that you're going to want to use in the trial setups as well. We have 100 points in a Blessed, 100 points in Elfborn. These are going to be really critical. Again, with these setups, we are focusing on our healing. Do not give a crap about damage. We're focusing on our healing and being able to be healed. We do have 32 points in Elemental Expert, though. We do run some Magicka skills, so these do help. 3 into Spell Erosion, and 35 into Physical Weapons Expert. We also have 72 into Ironclad, 32 into Spell Shield, 49 into Hardy and Elemental Defender, 48 into Thick Skin, and again, 20 into Heavy Armor Focus, 37 into Warlord, 64 into Arcanist, 56 into Tenacity, 82 into Shadow Ward, and 31 into Tumbling. So really the only big change was in our blue CP. So that is the health tank setup. Stat-wise, you are looking at unbuffed 51k max health, 20k magicka, 22.5k stamp, 1471 magic recovery. We also have 25k spell resist and 24k physical resist, all unbuffed. And again, this critical resist should not be there, and it will not be there once you transmute the shoulder. Once I transmute the shoulder, it won't be there. So that is our dungeon setups. I've actually been preferring the health tank myself. It's a ton of fun. Really like it. Just how beefy you are in this setup and how big your Dark Cloak heal is just really cool. But that is what we wear when I do dungeons. Now, when I go into trials, things do change a little bit. We're going to start with my off-tanking setup, what I wear when I am not the primary tank. So Monster set is going to be Bloodspawn. I really like Bloodspawn when I'm off tanking. You're going to see why when you see my second set, and I'm sure you already can guess what it is for the exact same reasoning as I stated before. Again, ultimate generation, physical and spell resist. It's just a really good monster set for tanking. But I like when I'm an off tank personally wearing Akaviri Dragon Guard. The magic recovery, the maximum health, and the reduced ultimate cost, healing taken. It's all really, really nice. And again, for all the same reasons I stated before, being able to help with Warhorn uptime, especially in trials, is super, super helpful. And with this combination of stuff, I'm able to help the group maintain really respectable Warhorn uptime. So I really, really like the Bloodspawn Dragon Guard combination when I personally am off tanking. And I am also wearing Ebon. I like to bring Ebon to the trials. Ebon's one of my favorite gear sets for trials. It also looks really good with my gear. So come on, fashion is endgame. But I really like Ebon. I like the way that I play with my other tank in the guild. I will usually bring Ebon, and he will always bring Torag's Pact, and then whatever else we need, we'll basically fill in the blanks. But I like running Ebon myself, so we have 2 things of health, healing taken, and increases the max health by 1,079 for myself and up to 11 group members within 28 meters of you. So it just gives your group that little bit of extra health to help you prevent getting hit heavy by a lot of mechanics. And just that extra health boost just helps the group tank ability a lot. Gonna basically kind of be the same thing as before. I run really similar setups in terms of traits and enchants. Again, it's gonna be 3 prismatics, 2 infused, everything else is sturdy. All the small enchants are health. We're looking at, again, a sturdy and tri-stat shield. The only time I ran the health glyph on the shield is for the health tank setup. Otherwise, I'm running tri-stats on my shield. We also have infused crusher on the front bar, same reasoning as I've stated. Infused ice staff with the stamina restoration enchant on the back bar. Again, block cost, and 2, magic recovery. I run all healthy jewelry personally. If you want the extra sustain, you can change a couple of these to harmony, but at the moment I have healthy. Harmony versus healthy is going to be really preferential. If you want to lower your health more towards 35k and run more harmony for better sustain, absolutely do that. At the moment I have these at healthy though, so I'll leave it up to you to decide what you want to do. The harmony, for those of you who do not know, gives you bigger synergy values. So basically when you use shard synergy or orb synergy, you will restore more resources to your character. So again, more sustain. It's up to you though to decide, do you want to be tankier or do you want to have a little bit of easier time sustaining? You know, it's really up to you though, and I'll leave you that choice. I would say maybe at the most do 2 harmony and leave the 1 healthy, because it'll, as long as your health is above 35 36k, do whatever combination of healthy and harmony you prefer. But again, right now I have all healthy. In terms of my skills, this is when my front bar skill is going to change completely depending on what I need. So for the general situations, I will slot Deep Thoughts for the reasonings that I stated before. In certain fights where I really need some extra damage mitigated, but mostly whenever I need to block spell projectiles, like in Mauve Lorcage, that's when I'll run Absorb Magic on my front bar instead, because bolster your defense is absorbing 20k damage from the next spell projectile cast at you, or in healing for 17% of your max health. Incredibly good skill. It also gives us more block cost reduction and allows us to block more damage. Very good skill. Again, Deep Thoughts is just prime for sustain. Really good. You could also, again, if you really like Sap Essence, you could also run Sap Essence front bar. That is an option. If you need to provide Altar to your group, you could also run Altar. I have Sanguine Altar. Conjure a Fountain of Blood to apply minor life steal to enemies in the area, healing you and your allies for 708 health every second while damaging them. And you also get the Blood Funnel synergy, healing for 47% of someone's max HP. This is incredibly potent and provides a lot of healing in a trials environment. So if you need to provide this to your group through some capacity, you can absolutely slot this skill as well. We also have, I don't have it morphed yet, so don't mind me, Shielded Assault from the Sword and Board skill line. This primarily is only used in Halls of Fabrication, though, when you're tanking the final boss, so that when he kicks you back, you're able to get back to him very quickly, but it's something that you should have. We also have Bone Surge, primarily for Cloud Rest, but you can use it as you'd like. This gives you a really big damage shield on yourself, 30% max health for 6 seconds, and because you're a tank, that's a pretty juicy shield. And whenever you can do this, whenever you activate the skill, an ally near you can activate Spinal Surge, granting the ally and up to 3 other friendly targets near them a damage shield for 50% of their max health for 6 seconds, and Major Vitality. So really good, really good for giving another synergy to the group, as well as giving your allies a synergy to help make them tankier and survive in really tough situations. And then finally, our last flex skill is Efficient Purge. For whenever you need a cleanse. The simple as that. Whenever you have a fight where a cleanse is required, you can slot Efficient Purge in the front bar and you'll be good to go. Now, another change that I will make a lot in Trials is if I do not need Silver Leash. You don't need Silver Leash. You do not need a pull for every single fight. Not every fight has ads that can be pulled. So, when I don't want to slot Silver Leash, normally what I will do is I will take off Silver Leash. I will put on Swallow Soul to maintain a siphoning ability on my back bar. Plus, this gives us a nice hot coming into ourselves so we get even more healing. Then I'll pop off Soul Siphon, and I will use Bolstering Darkness. Bolstering Darkness is an extremely powerful ultimate. Really strong. Real good. So, it gives a 70% snare to all enemies within the ring, and it gives you and your allies major protection while inside the ring and even after leaving it, reducing damage taken by 30%. And allies in the area can activate Hidden Refresh, granting them invisibility, increasing movement speed by 70%, and giving them a 17k heal over 4 seconds. Incredibly powerful. So if you do not need Silver Leash, I highly recommend slotting Swallow Soul in its place and putting Bolstering Darkness in exchange for Soul Siphon. But obviously, if you need Silver Leash, you are going to want to run this combination instead. Also, the one thing I haven't mentioned is potions. I run tripods. Obviously, tripods are going to be the best for a tank. If you do not have tripods, Trash Stamina Pots would be my second go-to, but definitely use Tri-Stat Pots for sure. Same thing, though, as before. Tri-Stat Food, Atrodoc Mundus, Vampirism, same stat spread, and still an Imperial. Now, that is our off-tank setup, and then we also have our main tank setup. Now, keep in mind, my main tank setup for Trials is still very not transmuted, okay? Very not transmuted. So, don't judge it too hard when you see it. I still have a lot of transmutation to do here, but for right now, I think it's in a pretty solid spot. In terms of health, we have about 36k health on my front bar, 18.4k Magica, and about 23k max stam. Now, I kind of have traded and glyphed this a bit for my needs at the current time. If you want to see the optimal traits and enchants, check out the written guide in the description below. But I'm going to show you guys what I have set up for this anyway, just because when you guys are getting and acquiring all of the gear that you need for the setup, maybe you kind of run in the same situation as me, where you're in the middle of transmuting stuff and you want to know, okay, well, how should I break down my stats? How should I enchant things while I'm still in the process of doing those transmutations? So I will show you that today. Our monster set is going to be Lord Warden. Lord Warden makes you tanky as a mofo, and it is just pure resistance. And what I like is the fact that it also gives some allies in the area resistance as well. Really strong. You get resistance as your one piece, and you get an extra 37-35 resistance when the 2-piece procs, and allies gain that resistance as well. So you're incredibly tanky with Lord Warden's Dusk. Incredibly tanky. I really like this setup. We also are still running Eben. I really like Eben. Really like it. I love bringing it to the trial, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this when I also talk about my next set, and that is Alkosh. It should not be a surprise to anybody. I am running Alkosh. Alkosh as a main tank is incredibly powerful. The 2 through 4 piece sucks. It doesn't matter. The reason you run this is for the 5-piece. When you activate a synergy, you send a shockwave from your position that deals physical damage, deals more damage over time, but it reduces physical and spell resistance of an enemy hit by 2940 for 10 seconds. This is a unique form of penetration. So the Alkosh combined with your major fracture and what the heck is it called? Breach that you get from Pierce Armor as well. So Alkosh, Major Breach and Major Fracture, plus the Crusher enchant, you are able to enable a lot of group DPS from your gear. Now, I personally know that there's going to be somebody typing in the comments going like, well, you should run Torrigs with this. Run Torrigs. I personally don't like running Torrigs packed with Alkosh. That's me. That is me personally on a Nightblade. I don't like it. I just find that Torrigs packed plus Alkosh, those are two sets for a tank that, yeah, the 5 pieces are really helpful, but they're really like not, they don't bring a lot to your character stat-wise. They really don't. So the way I kind of work with my other tank and my guild, I like as the main tank to bring Alkosh and Eben, and he brings Torrigs and whatever the hell else he wants as his other second setup. For me, I like that a little bit more than stacking Torrigs and Alkosh onto me as the Nightblade tank and making him run whatever he wants. Like, I feel that the stat distribution between the two tanks is a little bit better. That's just me, though. That's just kind of my preference. If you do not have Alkosh, if you have not acquired Alkosh, but you still want to main tank trials, you could run Torrigs packed instead of Alkosh. So instead of getting the unique debuff from the Alkosh 5-piece, you will instead have a stronger Crusher enchant. So that's a really good temporary until you acquire Alkosh, or if you just prefer Torrigs, go ahead and run Torrigs. But Alkosh, the 5-piece, is really potent in enabling group DPS. I really, really recommend it. It's very strong. But I still would recommend, if you're just like kind of pug tanking, or if you don't have something worked out with your guild already, I would still carry a set of Torrigs anyway on you. Just in case you do decide to off tank and you need to provide Torrigs packed, you can do that, and you could run this exact setup but run Torrigs instead of Alkosh, and things will be roughly the same. In terms of the way I have everything set up at the moment, I have 2 infused, surprise, surprise. Everything else is sturdy, except for I have 1 invigorating, rip. We have basically all health enchanted here. All my gear at the moment is health enchanted. Again, when you get to the optimal setup, you're going to have the usual 2 infused, the rest sturdy, triple prismatic health here. But at the moment, I have all health. And the reason for that is because all of my jewelry is robust at the moment, except for I have 1 healthy ebon ring. So right now for this setup, I am running 6-1, 6 heavy, 1 medium. We're running a medium Alkosh belt. So I'm running 1 ebon ring, 1 healthy, and 2 robust rings. So the thing was that when I was running the prismatics, my health was a little bit lower than I liked. So instead, I put health enchants on here instead. Optimally, again, you want to run some combination of healthy and harmony. Keep your health over 35k. And again, same thing as I said before. Run more harmony if you want more synergy sustain. Run more healthy if you want to be tanky. But because I have these 2 robust pieces, because I haven't gotten around to transmuting these Alkosh pieces yet, I decided to instead run all health on my gear. It kept my health at a place where I could really like it. And because I have these 2 robust pieces, it's not really a big deal that I'm not running any prismatics, because my health or my stamina is still in a really good place, and 18.4k max magicka is really good because of the way that I have my attributes done. So as you can see, I kind of worked around not having my pieces transmuted. I have a Divine Shield, which again is also Ripperino. This needs to be sturdy, so I am working on that. This is health enchanted as well. We do, thankfully, have an Infused Crusher enchant on the front bar, and again, I also need to transmute my back bar staff. But I do run as a main tank. I run a Lightning Staff. I do run a Lightning Staff, and I recommend main tanking trials that you run a Lightning Staff as well. And the reason is that the Lightning Staff provides concussion, which in turn provides off balance. And for those of you who do not know, off balance is extremely important to the stamina DPS in your group because of the exploiter passive from the champion point tree, or the ritual. So it increases your damage done against off balance enemies by 10%. So you can give the allies in your group a 10% damage buff simply by pressing 1 button. It's incredibly potent. And plus, you providing the lightning blockade allows the damage dealers in your group to run double Inferno, which will in turn make them deal more damage. So you bring that utility to the group as a tank that the group needs. But do be aware, your lightning staff is approximately useless for tanking. If you need to take a hit on your back bar, if you need to block, it will shred your stamina. You will take a lot of damage because the lightning staff brings nothing to the table when it comes to tanking. It's just you bring it for the lightning blockade, for the damage, for the extra damage. So that will take some practice to get used to. Thankfully, the ice staff does have like tanking passives through ancient knowledge. You do have those tanking passives through Ancient Knowledge. So as you can see, equipping a Frost Staff reduces the cost of block by 36% and increases the amount of damage you block by 20%. So if especially you're a newer tank, I would recommend sticking with the Frost Staff. But if you are a more advanced tank or you want to learn the advanced way off the bat as a main tank in Trials, I would absolutely bring the Lightning Blockade. Enables a lot of group DPS. But otherwise, you know, if you have a Lightning Staff in your group, you could also run an Ice Staff back there as well. Like I said, I like to run an Ice Staff as the off tank because usually the main tank's the one with the Lightning Blockade. But when I'm main tanking, I personally like to provide that Lightning Blockade to the group. Stat-wise for this setup, again, 18k health. I have 36k max, 36k health, 18.4k max Magicka, 22.8k max Stam, 1520 Magicka recovery, and then those are my resistances. Again, with all my builds, I made sure that you hit just about resist cap, so you can take my CP and what I have set up, and you'll pretty much be good in terms of your resistances. One other thing I did forget to mention, though, is one other flex skill, and that is going to be Shield Wall, which you'll eventually want to morph it to Shield Discipline for the front bar. This is a good skill to have morphed and basically kind of ready to use on certain fights. There are certain fights where as a tank, maybe your Warhorn is not as necessary. And instead, you being able to stay alive is more necessary. And I'm primarily talking about Ethereal Archive on the final boss. Trying to find a time to drop your block in between all of those axes hacking away on you is kind of a pain in the butt. So being able to slot Shield Wall here and have your ultimate, a very cheap ultimate, might I add, block for you so that you can actually cast your skills and you can actually make sure you get your sustain is incredibly important. So I would recommend picking up the skill and having it at your disposal for when you need it. I think I pretty much covered everything, though. Whew, that was a lot. That was a whole lot. In terms of rotation, there really isn't much of a rotation. Honestly, you're a tank. You pretty much do things as needed. But the big thing you want to maintain is obviously maintain your Leeching Strikes, maintain your Mirage, maintain Path, maintain Blockade. You know, it's big. You know, the big thing with tanking is a lot like when I talk about with PvP. Buff and debuff maintenance. If you're good at buff and debuff maintenance, you're gonna like tanking. Because that's what tanking really is. Maintaining your buffs, maintaining debuffs on enemies. You know, using Pierce Armor, keeping that up on the boss, and keeping Pierce Armor up on notable adds. Keeping Minor Maim up on that boss to make sure he's not clapping your teammates. You know, making sure that you keep your Warhorn uptime as good as you possibly can. Making sure that you're using your Soul Siphon on enemies that might be dying. Make sure that you're using Silver Leash and taunting enemies that are harassing your friends. You know, and a big thing, too, is to try to use Silver Leash to, you know, get your ads groups. You'll see me talk about that in a lot of my dungeon guides, where let's say you approach, you know, you're all buffed up, right? You're going to run into a fight here, and you have a group of ads ahead of you. You go ahead, use Blockade, you start Pierce Armoring the big guys, keep everybody in a tight circle, and then maybe see there's an ad all the way over there. You use Silver Leash, you bring him in, you maybe hit him with the Pierce, you know, block, weave in the heavy attacks when you're not taking any big heavy attacks from your enemies or any noticeable, or, notable, mechanics are coming up. So basically it's a lot of reactionary gameplay, and that's another thing with blocking. A lot of tanks are just, you know, they just block, you know, they just sit here and do this. With a Nightblade especially, you need to weave in light attacks whenever you can, weave in heavy attacks whenever you can. If you just sit and block here, you're not good. Your sustain is going to be terrible. We're not DKs. We can't just press Igneous and turn our Magicka into stamina. We have to be actively light and heavy attacking in order to make sure that we are maintaining our resource pool. So it's incredibly important. Plus, it'll just help you get into good habits of not just sitting and block all the time. But that'll just come with experience. Learning when you can block, or when you need to block rather, and when you can afford to drop block. And, you know, that again, that's going to come mostly with experience and learning all of the different mechanics of the dungeons and trials, etc. And just improving as your tank and in general. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this guide, and hopefully it made sense. I know there was a lot of information to cover. I know this video is 45 minutes long at the current, you know, moment. I was looking at my OBS, but there was a lot to cover here. I went over 4 different setups. Each setup had a lot of different stuff to cover. So hopefully you guys got what I'm trying to put down here. If you have any questions or want to, you know, maybe if I did accidentally miss something, please refer to the written guide in the description below. But hopefully you guys enjoyed my Darkness Nightblade tank PvE build today. Like I said, guys, this build has been a ton of fun. I really tried to make a bunch of setups that play into the strengths of the Nightblade and what the Nightblade brings to the table in terms of tanking. So I really hope you guys enjoy it. This is what I personally run all the time whenever I do my tanking, so you are getting exactly what I play with. But if you guys enjoyed this video, if you guys enjoyed this tank guide, I'd appreciate it if you left a like on it. If you have any questions, comments, or whatever, leave one below the video. And for some more great ESO content, I'd appreciate it if you hit that sub button, as well as hit the bell to make sure to keep notifications on. So I want to thank you guys so much for stopping by today. As always, I am Dots Gaming, and I will see you all in the next one.